And the magic machine tells me I'm alive, and the magic machine tells me I'm alive. I have been away from this role playing game channel too long, and part of the reason I've been away from this channel too long is I've been wasting my time being distracted by the old idiocy, um, that I've wasted my life with too much on the internet. And today was a perfect example. The majority of my time today, uh, that wasn't spent the real world today was spent with my children, which is great. But the distraction was I occasionally get distracted by the old school idiocy, and the old school idiocy was Shane the Ruiner. I went back and forth with Shane the Ruiner, and I'm figuring my stuff out. Part of what it is figuring your stuff out, and the short order on figuring out why is it that Dondalingers like waste of space, human beings. But look, I'm upset with Shane the Ruiner. So if I say things that are insulting about Shane the Ruiner, it's not that any human being is a waste of space. It's not that a person that makes less money than a person that makes more money, or a person that's got less education than a person that's got more education, or a person that's dumber than a person that is smarter is like less than or worthless, whatever. Shane's being a dick, and Shane's just being. Well, Shane's also takes advantage of people, and he's look, it is what it is. And it's frustrating because I gave this guy a pass for so long. For people who don't know the backstory, Shane the Ruiner is a guy who's a compulsive liar who is an adult who still plays Buck Rogers games. He's just like Corey Good. He plays these stupid games. He doesn't. I don't know what his lies are, but his lies of origin are hanging out with Orion Queens and growing up as a child in a space station and teaching Putin how to do telepathy and all the classic communicating with telepathy giants and underground suspension chambers, all the classic bullcrap. And what I really kind of figured out is that it's stupid machismo self-esteem games, and what it really is, it's all has to do with hierarchy bullshit. I have to process so much stuff, I think, with anxiety and feelings, and processing the ego hits and the inadequacies, or the having to feel like you have to play games of feeling inadequate, or being made to feel inadequate, or playing inadequate games with jerks and higher placed hierarchy higher in the hierarchy of society, even though you don't have respect for them. You have to play so many of those games in society that when you have a person like Corey Good, or Shane the Ruiner, a person who is a white trash, wipeout loser. Shane the Ruiner, has worthless, dead end jobs. He manages pizza places. He pumps gas. He works at security at stadiums. When he's a fucking loser, right? But there's a narrow percentage of people online that he's been able to convince that he's got some sort of ability to teach. And because I've got to deal with so many people and processing in the real world, and hierarchies of being in the law practice and dealing with other lawyers who've got movers and shakers, because I have to process so much stuff with people in actual positions of hierarchy that are actual, like dealing with people in society that are above me, or I have to feel like I have to play that game, that to have to come to a world where there are these fucking people that are not in a hierarchical higher position than me, but who I have to enter this artificial world of Illuminati whistleblower schmucks, where there's this artificial, Alice in Wonderland switcheroo, where people who have credentials, like if you're a doctor, you're indoctrinated, and if you're a lawyer, you're a liar. But if you are a guy with, nothing but a belly full of Budweiser and lungs full of, Bud, then you are, possibly, an interdimensional shaman with the ability to, translate the secret teachings of the Yael and figure out how to get people out of the secret space program, mind matrix, prison planet, and you're the here to right every wrong and save every day. It's just like, it's frustrating, and it gets me frustrated, and it pisses me off, and it sets me off. So all day long, I've been going back and forth on Instagram because what happened was I basically was sick and tired of it. Last night, like on some over some bull crap, I saw like one of this idiot's posts. And it's like it's high action stupidity by mail. Like it's just some sort of self-serving ridiculousness that I saw that he had posted that had like 2 likes on it from like 2 months ago, whatever. And for whatever reason, like I just started like, I shit posted on like 3 of his posts or whatever. This morning I woke up and he had taken a dig at my sobriety, which is like bullshit. He was like, word to the wise or piece of advice based on your, posting on my Instagram, like put down the phone when you're drunk. Whatever. So I was just like, yo, my sobriety's in check. And if you think I need to be drunk to tell like a compulsive liar that he's full of crap, man, I don't know what. So back and forth all day. And I'm like halfway tempted to go onto one of the other channels and just read the back and forth between me and this idiot. Shane the Ruiner, and anyone who thinks that Shane the Ruiner is a smart guy, you are not intellectually satisfying at all to talk to. You are not a bright bulb. You are not a sophisticated individual. You're not, your analysis of music is not in depth. Oh, and by the way, when I used to talk to you about even Nine Inch Nails, your knowledge of music was subpar. And you're going to say that you're an Illuminati whistleblower? Excuse me. If you were up in the echelons of the Illuminati, you of course would have to be up in the echelons of knowing about music hierarchies and musical tastes and sophisticated musical tastes and having to know to play all the games. So you would have to know about not only Nine Inch Nails and Tool, you would have to know about all the underground predecessors. You'd have to know about Current 93 and Throbbing Gristle and all the bands I used to try to quote to you and that you had no idea nothing about because you are a hot topic, mall wannabe, jerk-ass loser. Those guys won't even hang out with you. The only people that hang out with you are people that are Project Avalon, weirdo, wannabe, baby boomer, leftover grandma, morons, and the like. But have fun. You know what I mean? It was so sad going back and forth with that schmuck, but it was also activating. But I got to leave it alone. And my kids were like 11 years old. They're like, dude, they can see me when I'm on the phone going back and forth. They're like, yo. And I'm like, yeah, I know. They're like, is this another person you should just unfollow? My kids, right? You know what I mean? My daughter's my therapist. I'm like, yeah, I know. I get it. This is what. Oh, so sad. Anyway, 8 minutes, 25 seconds in. Thank you for letting me splurge. Thank you for letting me blurt. Shane, you will always be you. I'll always be me. You can say whatever you want about morals. I've got no morals. I got no ethics. I do this, whatever. Yeah, I went back to my kids. I see my kids every fucking day. Almost. I see my kids 6 days a week, motherfucker. You jackass. Start covering you if I want to cover you. And if I don't, I won't. And these schmucks that are just interviewing you because of Corey Good, why are you known as the guy that's the anti-Corey Good? Why are you the anti-Corey Good? Again, because of me. I was the guy that I interviewed you. Then Corey Good commented on my interview, commented on me taking you down. And then you came on and we started talking shit about Corey Good. That's why you're the anti-Corey Good. That's why Raised by Giants interviewed you, because you're the anti-Corey Good. You only started talking crap about Corey Good on my friggin' thing. Yeah, you were on Project Avalon and said a couple of things about him ripping you off. But then Bill Ryan threw you under the bus over there too. Whatever, dude. Everyone forgot about the history because I left this bullshit thing behind. You jackasses are still playing here. But whatever. 10 people will watch my RPG channel and they'll go, who's Shane the Ruiner? Whatever, dude. Anyway, Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. Dungeons and Dragons Forever. The Universal RPG. The first RPG. We've been talking about the MetaRPG here. the time traveling RPG. And we've been talking about the time traveling RPG, and we've been specifically talking about it most often in applying it to fighting fantasy, the fighting fantasy game books. I have a variation on the fighting fantasy game books right here, sorcery. Um, the fighting fantasy game books have but 3 stats. That's kind of where we started that, because we started talking about taking the elements of spell generation that we were using and working with in the meta RPG, and using that as a gateway to start interfacing with the pre-existing tabletop pen and paper RPG materials we found in our time traveling investigations. So the plane of the meta RPG begins with an occult practice of time travel, where we attempt to bring ourselves to a prior space and time by immersing ourselves in the available materials, the media of that given era. We empower and make that ritual revisiting of the past more powerful by utilizing what's known as nostalgia loops. I have seen and noticed, and I'm not alone in noticing, that in society, in culture, there are repeating patterns. Things come back into fashion. And looking over time, I have come to believe that there are these kind of standard nostalgia loops that kind of dictate that it seems that anything that's going on at a particular point in our modern mediated times seems to just be so much of a repetition and a repeat of what was going on, particularly 20 years ago. It seems that the most powerful nostalgia loops that have been identified by me and others seem to be about 20 years to 30 years ago. 20, 25, 30 years ago seem to be the most powerful loops. We've also noticed 10-year nostalgia loops as well. We've also identified the fact that it's getting weird because as time has gone on and this mediated environment that we've lived in has gone on for so long, that we have loops on top of loops, meaning that if we're looking at 2003 and identifying that there's a nostalgia loop going back 20 years to 1983, well, here we are in 2023. That means if there's a 20-year nostalgia loop going back to 2003, but there's a 20-year nostalgia loop, that meant that what was happening in 2003 was very much a repetition of what was happening in 1983. We're kind of getting a double feedback loop. We're not only getting 2003, but by net effect, we're also getting a double dose of 1983. If you were actually around in 1983, you're getting a double whammy because you're getting hit with the nostalgia bug twice, because you might actually be remembering the 80s. If we also take into account that there's 10-year and 30-year loops as well, we can see how it can get really crazy with feedback, because that means that, like, things like the 80s, I think we're noticing the nostalgia for the 80s is getting really weird because it never leaves, right? Because if at some point we're looking back 10 years at a given year, like in 1983, we're going back 10 years for it to 1993, then in 2003, we're going back to 1938 again on a 20-year nostalgia loop, but then again in 2008, hey, we're going back on the 25-year nostalgia loop to it, and then 2013. Well, see, it gets like this, and all of a sudden we've been in 1983 forever. and then 1984 forever, 85 forever, 86, and then you see, and then you start to realize, wait, holy shit, the 80s were a very nostalgic decade in and of itself. That black and white pattern that we associate with the 80s so much, with the neon lights, so much of that is really a throwback to retro 1950s diner and drive-through motifs. Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe bus, all that stuff. Fins on Chevrolets and that sort of stuff. There was all that 50s, 1950s image was all around in the 80s, Back to the Future and stuff. Anyway, we're just establishing that kind of that nostalgia loop flavor to let you know what was going on. So we work with those nostalgia loops to improve our ability to invoke the past. So in 2023, in an attempt to make our time travel attempts more powerful, we specifically look to travel to 2003. Weaponizing that nostalgia loop, knowing that there's a prevalence, a heavy, powerful influence of 2003 on 2023, we know it'll be easier for us to get that flavor and feeling to the degree that we can isolate a feeling of 2003, given the fact that by 2003, everything was retro city. What was the culture of 2003? We can identify historical events, the war on terror, the Iraq war was just beginning. Don't tell me that Ivan Teller doesn't watch my shit, because he's just talking about the war in Iraq. The war in Iraq is not going on now, Ivan Teller. It was going around 20 years ago. My friend, don't tell me he doesn't watch my crap. Come on. Meanwhile, they're on the RPG channels. People are like, who the heck is Ivan Teller? I gotta stop cursing. So we go back. We only listen to music. We only watch read books. We only look at comic books. We only watch movies and TV from the year, our target year that we are attempting to travel to. And we added in this element of doubling down on role playing, on trying to live and move and go into these eras by picking up the pen and paper and tabletop role-playing games that we could find there, going into the virtual spaces that were possible then and there in those eras. And why are we doing this? I don't know. We are going deeper and deeper into the cave of the unknown because we are better than the other people. Those other people are dicks who keep on doing the same stuff over and over again, but we're awesome. And we're doing new stuff over here. So check this out. So I'm already getting stuff. So we mentioned 3.0 and 3.5. So check this out. So here we go. We got David Bucky first in the live chat. Gold medal on to thee. We've got Tim Frey grabbing that silver. We've got Jonaside grabbing the bronze. Golden coin 100. Honorable mention. Hey, no medal, but an honorable mention all the same. Tim Frey, 3.5 was based. Not that I was still playing. Sure you weren't. Come on now. Here we go. Jonaside, I love 3.0. Thought 3.5 was a downgrade. I can't tell the difference. Now I'm going to tell you something, Jonaside. I'm going to tell you something different. What was the goddamn difference between these things? I can't. Now listen, I'm going to tell you something, folks. So here's where we're going to go into this. The whole point of this. Okay, so let's fast track. We got to get to where we're going. We'll speed round this. And if you're new, good. Because that means somebody new showed up. And if you got questions, Great, because that means somebody new showed up. We travel back in time with this simple process that works better than anything my competition ever came up with. F those guys. You only listen to music from your target year. If and when possible, don't go crazy. You don't need to worry about going crazy. If you listen to something from some other era, it's not like the spell is broken. The secret to my sauce is low anxiety. You can't screw it up. Magic without tears. I'm talking magic almost without effort. The standard paradigm for occult practices has been, let's amp up the intensity in a brief period of time, concentrate it in a narrow cast of a moment, of a ritual, for a high impact. And obviously that energy can't be sustained for long. So we got to do things really quickly and really intense, and then get it done and do it. 2-day ritual, 1-day ritual, 1-hour ritual, 3-day ritual. And we got to be in isolation. We got to do these preparations. We got to have it just so. And if anything happens with the practice of this, it's all gone bananas. And then we got to do this elaborate. We got to put it out of our mind and do all this crap. Blah, blah, blah. No. We cultivate and sustain our magical energy long-term over time. Painless. Let it just go into the background. A slow and easy process of time traveling. Drift. 2003, let it come to you. You don't need to fight with your friends in the car. If someone else has turned to put on the radio, let them put on the radio. If you hear something else, it's all about how much time you spend in 2003. The more, the better, but interruptions don't worry us. And we don't worry about quality. We worry about quantity. It doesn't matter what you look at from 2003. It doesn't matter if it was an intimate experience to you to 2003. It doesn't matter if you saw it before in 2003. All that matters that it was from 2003, or that it could have been from 2003. So you only listen to music from 2003, or barring that, stuff that was made before 2003. You repeat this process that we just exampled in music. You do this for video games, for books, for literature, for scrolls, for TV, for movies, etc., etc., etc. And you try and do this for as long as possible. So when we are going to given years, and we've identified our loop years for where we are now in 2023, our loop years, our 10-year loop year is 2013. Our 20-year loop year is 2003. Our 25-year loop year is 1998. We have our 30-year loop year of 1993, our 40-year loop year of 1983. Hey, we have a 50-year loop year of 1973. I want to look at the live chat first before we just begin our discussion. I know I put Dungeons & Dragons 3.0 and 3.5 in the title, but we might start talking about Dungeons & Dragons in general first as we're moving through, we started talking about fighting, the fighting fantasy game books. We've been working with those and taking the spells we generated because we watch movies and listen to music from our target years when we're going on our loop journeys back. We write down our spells, and the spell generating processes you can see in earlier videos. And we were talking about when we were playing these games, we were invoking and we were putting in influencing these game rules as given, So if we're like in 2003, here's the player's handbook from this is a reprint from a print on demand version I got from Drive Through RPG. For whatever reason, the player's handbook 3.5 is like the holy grail of Dungeons and Dragons used books. Finding a used copy of this book was somehow prohibitively expensive, which is why I got it on print on demand. I had no problem sourcing a Dungeon Master's Guide 3.5. I had no problem sourcing a Monster Manual 3.5 relatively cheaply. But for whatever reason, finding a relatively cheap player's handbook was prohibitively expensive. So I just ended up getting. It's not like I was like I'm morally or ethically attached to getting used copies. It was just that's how. Primarily, it's because if you get a print on demand copy from Drive Through RPG, it just takes a long time for them to get to you. So anyway, but we see. Check this out. This was beautiful though, because people who know my story about my story with my second edition player's handbook know that one of the things that I love about it was that even though it's on it covers the nostalgia loop because it was originally published in 1989, but the printing of the second edition book I have is from 1993, August 1993, and I graduated high school in 1993, and my birthday's in August, so it's like it covers the whole stretch. Anyway, forget about it. Don't worry about that. Going far afield. But here we have something similar because the first printing of the Player's Handbook 3.5 was July of 2003, but this printing is from August of 2012, and obviously it's a reprint, so it's from before that, from after that. But this is whatever thing they sourced it from, August 2012. But that's great. So we have this covers we have July 2003, so we have the 20-year loop, and then August 2012, well, 2013 would have been our 10-year loop. So that like covers the whole thing. But what that really shows is this 3.0, 3.5. Then when you realize that first edition Pathfinder, I was going to bring the first edition core Pathfinder book to show you. I have two versions of it. It's 3.5 compatible. The reason that they made Pathfinder is essentially just kind of like a dummy cover of 3.5 with the serial numbers rubbed off. I mean, it's different enough. Like Monty Cook does the intro to it, and it basically said, like, if you look at first edition Pathfinder, they basically tell you, like, it is the first, like, it basically is the first edition. It's basically 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons, and so if you look at the totality, like, look at Pathfinder 3.5 OGL compatible. OGL 3.5 compatible. It's the same. What does that mean? What does it mean when a game is compatible with another game? It means it's the same frigging game, basically. I mean, I know it's like, there's differences, but it's basically the same game. So if we're talking about experiences that can be identified as being from an era or being able to have been from an era, then we have to know that if we invest our intelligence in learning a game system, if we take our time to learn 3.0, 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons, we are preparing ourselves to be able to master a system that, from a MetaRPG time travel perspective, will allow us essentially to cover our bases from 2000 to 2013 and really beyond, because people are still because people still play 3.5 and people still play 3.0. People still play first edition Dungeons and Dragons. Look, check this out, because this is exactly what I was talking about. And if we go to something like this, like Iron Falcon is by Chris Donnerman. This could tell us about the nostalgia loop, because check this out. This is copyright 2014, right? This is the first Dungeons and Dragons game rewritten to be comprehensible. That's what it is. What is Iron Falcon? This is not a new game. The Iron Falcon rules for classic fantasy role playing reproduce with the highest possible degree of faithfulness the mechanics of the role playing campaigns from the very early days of the hobby. 1974, 73, 74. I can bring up for you. Hold on. Fair use, fair use, fair use. The purpose of this, of sharing the screen, would be to illustrate a point, not to do anything else. This is not the original cover. When they reprinted this and made this available for print this is not available for print on demand. This is just available from Wizards of the Coast on it's available through DriveThruRPG, but it's like because DriveThruRPG and let me do this. I don't what am I trying? I'm not trying everything. Their thing, they have some sort of like package deal with whatever it's called, like the Dungeon Masters Guild or whatever. So this is 1973. Liz, forward. Once upon a time, this is the first Dungeons and Dragons game. Forward. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a little group known as the Castle and Crusade Society. Yada yada yada. Da 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 da. Check this out. Look at this. 1st November 1973 by E. Gary Gygax, Tactical Studies Rules Editor, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Dude! 50-year nostalgia loop. 1973. Iron Falcon. 2014. Can you do the math? I can. 73 to 83, 83 to 93, 93 to 2003, 2003 to 2013. This is 2014. So it's 41 years. 40-year nostalgia loop. Duh. Can you do the math? So this is the first edition Dungeons & Dragons game. So even though this is not the original, Dungeons & Dragons is the first role-playing game, really. The second one is Tunnels and Trolls. So if you know those rules, right, technically you could just use that. But the first, it goes back to here. What I'm going to tell you is this, the Mulvey edition of Dungeons & Dragons from 81. Then there was another one before that. Then the purple box, and then here's the one that I played from 83, the Menser edition, right? And then you would advance Dungeons & Dragons. But they change and they're different editions, but those editions and what changes, really, folks, there's so much that's exactly the friggin' same. It's the same core abilities generated basically in the same way. I mean, okay, what are the bonuses? You know, is it just the fighter that can roll for extraordinary strength, or do we get rid of extraordinary strength if the guy rolls an 18? You know what I mean? Are we getting away from the elf and the dwarf are just are classes onto themselves, or they can beat other classes, right? There's like differences, yeah, but there's so much at its core that is exactly the same. And when you consider that what we've been doing with this meta RPG and so much of this spellcraft to what we're going to be doing is essentially taking these spells and just adding them onto these abilities, right? In the same way of just taking these energies from these movies and books and other games and moving them onto these characters or into these worlds or onto these spaces or onto these pieces of equipment just to move energy, just to practice moving things in spaces. And I think what we're doing is If magic is the art of making change happen in accordance with one's will, and in these virtual worlds of these role-playing environments, we can be and we can see rules that establish how extraordinary things can be done and how those extraordinary things can be understood from step to step, how they kind of take place and are done in these spaces, then I believe that kind of what we're doing is by seeing how it's kind of like reverse engineering, by seeing how we can take energy and move energy into those virtual spaces, by then seeing how we can move and work with those energies in those virtual spaces according to the rules of those virtual spaces. That may somehow inform our ability to work with energy in our non-virtual space. And again, all of this is theoretical. I don't know how any of this works, if it works at all. One of my guiding principles, honestly, is this. This is not a joke. This is not a setup. I believe there is spiritual wisdom in the lyrics to a song by Weird Al Yankovic. It appears, it appeared in, I think it appeared for the first time on his album in 3D, but it also appears in the movie Transformers, the first one, the animated one. It's the song Dare to Be Stupid. It's a very powerful lesson. It's what I'm doing right now. I mean, look, if anyone played this movie, this video in certain contexts, I think I probably look like a big idiot. We're moving energy around. We're playing playing Dungeons and Dragons. You go to this virtual space, and we move the energy around. We're turning. Fuck. But anyway. And I'm all over the map. So be it. But I love this. Genocide. I love 3.0. I thought 3.5 was a downgrade. So I got the 3.5 Player's Handbook, having previously had the 3.0 Player's Handbook. And I had the 3.0 Player's Handbook from 2000. But we're in 2003, we're supposed to be going to. So knowing that the 3.5 books came out in 2003, I said, well, hold on. I should have the 3.5. So I got the 3.5 Player's Handbook, and but I had already kind of been deep into the 3.0 Player's Handbook, right? Genocide, when I got the 3.5 Player's Handbook, I immediately started looking at it, and I said to myself, well, hot diggity damn. I kind of feel like a horse's patoot. And why? Well, I'll tell you why. I spent, I don't know, it was like 35 something bucks for this book, which is not like a huge amount of money, right? But I immediately thought to myself, looking at all the illustrations, I thought to myself the following. Well, now here we go. I know because there's things like this. Like there's Wire Revision. The new Dungeons & Dragons game debuted in 2000. In the 3 years since the D20 game system energized the RPG industry, we gathered tons of data on how the game is being played. We consider D&D to be a living game that constantly evolves as it's played. We gathered feedback from as many people who have played, So I could kind of tell that something had happened. What's new in the revised Player's Handbook? We've increased the number of feats and spells to choose from, and we've added new class features to the Barbarian, Bard, Druid, Monk, Ranger, and Sorcerer. The entire book has been polished and refined, all in response to your feedback and to reflect the way the game is actually being played. We've streamlined some rules, expanded others. We've overhauled skills and spells. Take a look, play the game. We think you'll like how everything turned out. When I take a look at that description of what's changed, I immediately say to myself, that's $35 I could have spent on a hand ski. No, I didn't. And people were like, what's a hand ski? No, don't listen. I don't pay for hand skis. Listen. I just sit on my hand like everybody else. Listen, it's called The Stranger. Hey, folks, Jonaside, help me. Because I don't know. I was looking at even the illustration. I was like, for painting a new picture. I was like, draw a new picture. You're asking these motherfuckers to buy a new book? After 3 years, you're asking the brothers and sisters, you're asking the brothers to buy new books? New illustrations, please, come on. I looked through and I was like, well, I wanted to bang that dwarf. I wanted to bang that gnome, that halfling, that human, that half-orc. I wanted to bang all these gals. I recognize these girls. Yeah, no, those are the same girls from before. I know these people. What the hell? This is crazy. You know what I mean? This is the same book. I recognize that guy. Krusk. That's the same dude. I remember that guy. I was like, hey, I'll bet you anything. I'll bet you anything. Ah, there he is. Ah, there's Krusk helping that paladin climb the mountain. Just like he was in the 3.0 book, right? I was like, what the heck? Come on now. What the heck? Jeez Louise. Come on now. Because I gotta tell you, I mean, the spell, like combat rules, like the way that we do this meta RPG stuff, a lot of this stuff is happening. A lot of I think the role play is happening right on the character generating sheet. That's what we've been seeing so far with the fighting fantasy stuff. I think for me, anyway, it is what it is. But we'll get there. Here's David Bucky. I was born in '87. I only remember the '90s. We're gonna steal you for your youth. Born in '70. I remember stuff. There you go. I remember stuff. Yeah? Do you? Sure do. Like what? We used to have corn, and there would be these parties called corn parties, and the people would come, and they'd gather the corn and they'd husk. Okay. Here we go. David Bucky. I played D&D in 2003. I remember it exactly. There you go. And that D&D movie coming. There you go. Exactly. I first played D&D in '84, I believe. That was right around 85. I think 85 was my year. Here we go. Jonaside. I liked Pathfinder, and yes, it's 3.5, but I still like it. Hey, listen. And the point is this. Like learning a language. You're going to learn a second language. What language are you going to learn? If you speak English, you might say Spanish. Why? A lot of people speak Spanish. If you're a non-English speaker, a default choice for most people in the world for their second language is what? English. It's considered the universal language of business and finance because whatever reason, it just is what it is. So if a person were to, whether you like it or lump it, if you think about the amount of material and the amount of people, if you want to communicate, or if you were thinking that we are invoking our own memories or tapping into our own memories or tapping into the memories of the collective unconscious, the majority of role-playing game memories, the majority of role-playing game mental space is intelligence, dexterity, wisdom, charisma, constitution, strength, right? Ranging from 3 to 18. You know? If you go back to the earliest days, there's no skills, right? Roll a d20. Look at the applicable. Look at the applicable stat. Look at the applicable skill. Did you make it or not? The things with armor classes and stuff. There's variations. Okay. Morningstar, that's not necessary. If there's any, the moderators, feel free to take care of Morningstar, who doesn't seem to know where they are, where they've wandered into. There you go. And I still have dice for my Genocide says I still have dice for my first D&D box, a D4 and a D20. I do too. I've shown it. I've shown my I think I have my D12 from my or my D10 from my first box. Here we go. Genocide. I played a mixture of advanced D&D or 2.0, the 3.0, 3.5, and Pathfinder plus online extra content. There you go. There you go. This Tank Panic David Bucky. Dang, that's back when Mom thought you were summoning a demon. Here we go. Genocide. I even had the first Forgotten Realms box, but I think I only have the map now. Sure been a long time since I've seen it. There you go. The elephant in the room. We say hello to the elephant in the room. Tim Frey. Prestige glasses. You get prestige glasses. Here we go. There you go. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here's Genocide. I thought 3.5 was a cash brag, the first of many. You're not alone. You're not alone. Even the concept of having a 0.5 edition after 3 years, if you look at the history up to that point of role-playing games and even Dungeons and Dragons itself, you'll see that people should have been expecting at least like 10, 50, right? Because like the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons comes out, the first game of Dungeons and Dragons comes out in like 1974, 75. The first kind of major revisions start like the first Advanced Dungeons and Dragons book, I think, was the Monster Manual that came out in 77. There was a revision, I think, to Dungeons and Dragons that came out in 77 as well. Like there was like the Moldvay Cook revisions, and then you start getting into the basic D&D, revisions in 81 and in 83. Then you have the rollout of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, proper. And then, the first big push of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, like I think in like 85, when all like the main books, and it starts to really, 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 really build up steam. And you have the two products going back and forth with each other. But then you don't have Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. The second edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons doesn't come out until 89. So if Advanced Dungeons and Dragons had started kind of like in 77, it doesn't have a second edition until like 10 years later, 10, 12 years later. And if Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2.0 was 89, 90, 3.0 with Wizards of the Coast is 2000. So that's another decade. So they didn't even do 3.5 at 2005. That would have been, I mean, if you're Wizards of the Coast and you're thinking we got to do a 0.5 edition, you're doing it after 3 years? I mean, that's just fucking madness. I mean, this is not a software rollout. You're talking about three new books. And the notion that the whole game had gone so crazy that people needed a new edition then. I mean, that's right. I mean, Genocide, I mean, people talk about like, Wizards of the, when this whole brouhaha just happened in the tabletop role playing. And notice this. Remember how everyone was going, everyone's going to leave Wizards of the Coast. Dungeons and Dragons is dead. We're all going to go back to Pathfinder. We're all going to go here, there, and everything. That lasted exactly like I said. That lasted 1 week, right? Everyone's back. Everything's back to normal. Dungeons and Dragons said we're going to put 5th edition now is going to be Creative Commons as well. You win. We're not going to disturb the open game license. You guys win. And all the people that said, no, you guys went too far and you're woke and you're broke. And all those guys that thought there was going to be, that they were going to have a Gamergate 2.0 and that, who was his name? RPG Pundit was going to come back and be like, Bubba the Love Sponge of the role-playing game community. No, nothing happened. Nothing happened. No, nothing happened. Nothing happened at all, right? But it's true. It's like after 3 years to have another edition. And like I said, when I looked at this, I was like, this is another edition. I couldn't even tell the difference. Now, and I don't think the way that I use these books, the way that I use this material, I don't know if I'm going to be able to really see, a difference. And all that ends up happening with this game, with Dungeons and Dragons, all the time, with all of these editions, is the same thing. It starts off with a basic rule set, a basic new edition where we said, okay, at the end of the last edition, things got crazy and out of hand. So what we've done is we've brought it down to basics and we've streamlined it. And we've made it simple, moving, fast moving, easy to understand, this, that, and the other thing. And then what they do is they add more shit based on the fact that people are like, oh, we're bored or we want more stuff, or they just to sell more stuff. So they add prestige classes, more feats, more environments, more places to go, more things to do, more equipment. And then what ends up happening? Because of that, because of all of these things like feats, new skills. Feats are just things that different characters can do, special things that people can do at more advanced levels. It's more things that your guy can do so that your barbarian, your 35th, your 12th level barbarian isn't like a dick cheese compared to like a 12th level sorcerer that can like summon a dragon and, fart dimensional transportation devices, right? Or whatever the case may be, whatever, right? But every time you invent these like new fantastic things for these things to do, what is it? It's basically a new rule that someone needs to comprehend and keep aware of and be aware of. And that's the thing. That's why the DMs were going crazy and everyone was carrying around 15,000 books everywhere, right? The DM is like, well, actually, you can't do that because the room is inescapable. And the person's like, well, actually, my ninja has the ability, the feat of Shadow Death Surprise of the Frog Maiden. On a roll of a perfect 20, he actually can pass through walls. And the DM is like, what? And the guy's like, read it and weep. Passes him the fucking splat book with fucking Ninja Warrior 3.1. And the guy's like, the fuck you talking? Approve it with your DM first. And the DM's like, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? It's just like nuts. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then it's like all these classes, all these things. And what ends up happening is at the end of the day, everyone walks around dissatisfied. And then they say, oh man, let's go back to the easy days when it was so much easier and simpler. And then they go back to the days when it was easier and simpler, and they say to themselves, oh man, it's great. So it's so simple. But what if we added just a little complexity? Oh yeah, sure. Just a little bit more. Well, this is nice, but what if we just added just a little change, a little complexity, and before you know it, there's a ninja warrior walking around with a blunderbuss, and everyone's screwed. Here we go. Here's Tim Frey. I think I read 3.5 on lunch afternoons at Borders. I didn't really think about buying. There you go, Borders. I gotta love it. Did someone say corn parties? There you go. Did someone ask for a single? Fuck that. Here we go. Jonaside. +3 sword, +2 base attack, +4 strength, and so +7 on your attack rolls. Well, actually, it gets confusing. Mid-1990s, late stage TSR had to be the cash grab high era. Possibly. But how do we evaluate these things? Red Dragonlance books, never played it. My kids, here we go. Genocide. My kids like 5th edition, but I told them to get off my lawn. There you go. What is the difference between 5th edition and 3.5? It's skewed different. The skills are calculated a little differently, but it's still the same basic skill, the same basic stats, evaluated and generated at origin the same way. Yes, different races that have different, additions and subtractions, but it's still basically races that add subtractions and diminishments to the core stats. Then classes, which have skills attached to them or don't have skills attached to them if you're playing the earlier edition. And by the way, we have all these things like you guys know about what is it like the what do they call that the like the micro light edition. Like there's ways to play. There's like different versions of D20 that's like simplified to bring it down where it just basically like gets rid of like 90% of the prestige and feat stuff and skill stuff. Here we go. Here's Phaedrus Live. I still really don't know the difference between 3.0 and 3.5. I don't think anyone does. Here we go. Give you bonuses to attack, defensive, or spells and abilities. Yeah, no, there you go. Here we go. Dave Bucky, I like 5th edition. There you go. Here we go. Genocide. So in 3.0, your ranger is a two-handed bonus. In 3.5, it was you choose ranged weapon or two-handed bonus. Okay, there you go. So it's like things like that. Yeah. So there you go. But then again, what does it basically turn into? Right? If you think about it, here's what I'm going to say. First edition Dungeons & Dragons, second edition Dungeons & Dragons, third edition of Dungeons & Dragons, 3.5 edition Dungeons & Dragons. Fourth edition Dungeons & Dragons is a little bit of a different thing. Fifth edition Dungeons & Dragons, we're right back into it, right? And almost all of the D20 stuff, and this is even applies to basic Dungeons & Dragons, like the Rule Cyclopedia stuff. If I were to tell you that it's basically the main stats generated with 3d6, roll a d20 to see if you pass the core mechanic or not, if you make the thing, right? And then after that, it's all house rules. Are you using saving throws or are you just using ability checks? Or separate saving throws, right? Are you using this table or that table? It's basically all the same freaking game. And if you think about the amount of games that are derivative of the D20 variation of Dungeons & Dragons, it's amazing how much of this stuff probably is absolutely cross-compatible and how much of people's, the majority of people, like probably in the Western world's gaming experiences, are so much tied to basically the same stuff. And if we think about how people register their experiences and memories and where these differences lie and how much of these differences lie in this extreme minutia, like that ranger, like how many people play rangers? How many people are going to play rangers that are going to go back and forth between favoring using one type of weapon versus using another type of weapon? In other words, there are all these different rules. But for any given DM dealing with any consistent group of players or any player, the number of rules that you actually encounter and the number of things that you actually encounter and experience is probably fairly limited and probably pretty consistent. I don't know anybody that like uses all the spells. Everyone that I've ever known that has ever played role-playing games and played a spellcaster has always kind of like had a style, right? Not only in the sense that these role-playing games kind of like limit the number of spells a person can have and they have to choose or if they have to find them or if they learn them a specific way or prepare them and all that jazz, but also people have and develop strategies and ways of interacting in the environment, even ways of interacting with the environment as they're given character playing as a thief, playing as a magic user, playing as a fighter. Some fighters are in there, right, in the dungeon, like Columbo, right? I take my sword, I poke the door. How many slats does the door have? What slats? Like pieces of wood that make up the door. I don't know, John. My character's name is not John. I don't know, DeSwan. 8. Is it vertical? Yes, they're vertical. Is there metal binding between? Shall I draw you an illustration? Perchance you should, DM. DeSwain begins checking the leftmost wood panel of the door with the butt of his sword. We've seen this. Listen, how do you want to do it? And some magic users are right? Some magic users are, I blast this guy, it's fireball over here, and then this flaming wall over this guy. And then some magic users, it's wall of illusion. Blast this guy over here, the light bulb over this guy, over this, Long invocations and discussions with the familiar about what the familiar wants to do as far as how it wants to travel to the east end of, Londork to find the silver spoon of the maiden, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Everyone's got, but you know what I mean? So there's a lot of things you never, the spell's there and 2/3 of the book are made up of it, but you're never going to see that spell. Who cares? We certainly don't. But it's still interesting. It's still interesting. But we wonder too, and we don't want to go crazy, and we certainly don't want to go into the poorhouse. So what is the most effective and efficient way to do it? And what is the system to learn? And how is the system to learn how to do it? And what is acceptable and what is not acceptable? I don't know exactly, but I know the discussion has begun. David, Genocide, give you bonuses to attack, defensive, or spells and abilities. David Bucky, I like 5th edition. Genocide. So in 3.0, we went over that already. Okay, here we go. David Bucky. DMs make or break most games. That's why I like the solo. You can play whenever you want. You don't need friends. I like that. See, there you go. It's David Bucky. Where you been? You've been around here. Friends are overrated. There you go. We've been doing the solo RPG thing. David, where you been? John's like, okay, 4th, to be honest, in my opinion, was World of Warcraft, the tabletop, and that's why it epic failed. No, listen, hey, absolutely. But it's because it epic failed, which is why I love it. Why I bought the whole thing. Fireball is overrated. I said it. There you go. It's nothing compared to Magic Missile. Magic Missile for the win. Put it up your butt. Genocide. I never understood bards. I gave my love a cherry. Chevy Chase went to Bard College. So, if the goal is to see that when we go to an era, to a year, that we are sticking and being as close to that year as possible and using material from that year calling stuff from that year the preferred medium to use. But knowing and understanding that material from before a given year would have been present in a given year and therefore of a given year, a possibility in a given year. an option in a given year and therefore, valid in a given year. Right? The first edition rules of Dungeons and Dragons from 1973 were present in 1983. Though it might have been an odd bird or an odd dog that was playing it, they still might have been there. So there are resources. Many of these games, these PDFs of these original editions and books are available online in various places. I'm certainly not telling you to go out and get a cracked version or a stolen version. Some of you guys and gals probably have some of these books still lying around or can find them at a library or to use bookstore, find them relatively cheap online. Also, a lot of this stuff, if you're willing to work with PDFs, I like printed materials, but some people don't mind electronic materials. Some of this stuff is relatively inexpensive on places like DriveThruRPG. Like the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, the ODD, what they're calling ODD, that was like really cheap. It was like, I don't know, like $12. So you get like 1973's Dungeons and Dragons for like $12. But warning, it's notoriously hard to understand. Okay? And it makes reference to another game book called Chainmail. That's available itself on DriveThruRPG as well. Brad Magic. Oh, I thought he graduated from Pratt. His picture is in Bard. Is that Bard? So I thought he was there. But we'll see. Doesn't really matter. All right. So, but if you're on the 50-year loop, the original version of Dungeons and Dragons has got copyrighted illustrations from 1973. The little forward from Gary Gygax is from 1973. On the 30-year loop, though, it's this version called Iron Falcon from Chris Gonnerman. That is his attempt to be as faithful as possible. It's from 2014. The copyright is 2014 to 2022. The cover art is copyright 2015, so it's probably a little bit later, but the contents purport and promise to be as accurate as possible the first edition OD&D. Only those classic game mechanics in a clear and concise fashion in the form of a single book. Basically, the first 3 books as they appeared in the first box set of Dungeons and Dragons, but comprehensible and like able to be understood. I love this book, Iron Falcon. It's great. And all of Chris Gonnerman's stuff, this is the hard copy version, but if you get the soft copy version from Amazon, it's like $6. And his basic fantasy RPG is the same thing. It's really, really cheap. So if a person were to use the original Iron Falcon rules, I don't really think it's like that big, like a derivation from the first edition Dungeons and Dragons. So you could really kind of think of yourself as using like kind of 1973 rules. Any first version of basic Dungeons and Dragons, really works, but this is the Menser version from 1983. Here are my original books, the Player's Manual and the Dungeon Master's Rule Book. These are great. These versions of this book are available from DriveThruRPG as PDFs as well. So you can see them. They're great. And that's obviously right from 1983. So that's right on the 40-year nostalgia loop. So if you get them, you could use those rules. And they're very, very basic. They're the very basic version of Dungeons and Dragons. And you can use them. The one thing that most people don't like about that very basic version of Dungeons and Dragons is that elves and dwarves and halflings are like their classes. They're not like, you can't be like an elf wizard or an elf thief. If you're an elf, you're an elf. They're like basically hybrid, like wizard fighters, but they're an elf, like, or a halfling is a halfling and a dwarf is a dwarf. They do what they do, but what they do is they do, in toto of their race, like they're onto themselves, and that's it. And there's just halflings, elves, and dwarves. There's no like orcs or gnomes or anything yet. So it's a little bit, more limited, but in its limitations, it's easy to, you can read each of the books in the night and basically be ready to go. And they're really, really cheap on Drive Through RPG. And again, if you're using it on the 40-year nostalgia loop, you could use those rule sets and apply them to like anything, any spell, could be applied to them from, 1983 to 1993 to 2003, 2013, up from wherever. We're not going to worry about like Advanced Dungeons Dragons or second edition Advanced Dungeons Dragons right now. Here's the rule cyclopedia. This is the comprehensive taking of, they took all the basic, expert, and companion box sets from the original basic Dungeons & Dragons sets and basically put all of those rules into this rule cyclopedia. This is from 1991, but obviously this could cover things from like 93, forward and stuff. If you have the 3.0 books to 3.5 books, that takes care of you from the millennium forward, from 2000, 2003 forward. If you've got a 3.5 book, I wouldn't recommend using it for stuff from 2000 forward. I would say, so if you're gonna dive in and you don't have 3.5 yet, I would get 3.0, because then you could use 3.0 to do 2000 work forward, and then later on get the 3.5 stuff if you wanted to. But if you're with us and you're on the 20-year loop and you're really concentrating with us on the 20-year nostalgia loop, then obviously the 3.5 stuff is released in 2003. This came out first. The 3.5, I think, started in July of 2003. I have some earlier 3.0 stuff that came out in 2003. Here we have, this is March. So we just came out of this on the 20-year nostalgia loop, Arms and Equipment Guide. And you'll see, this is the source for this work include Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Arms and Equipment Guide, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Monsters Manual. So they took the old 2nd Edition stuff and they just reprinted it for 3rd. We have this great thing. We have the Fiend Folio. I love this. I love this. This is one of my I like this one. This is one of my favorite monster manuals. And this is from April, so we're coming right on to this. Is good. How many pages does this one have? Maybe we'll do like a couple of pages, like a month, or maybe. That's a winner. Yellow Musk Zombie Orcs. I love it. Wicker Man. Here we go. Love it. Mog Society. Ethergonts. I'm not going to make an X joke. Here we go. My books with the kids, they use them for obscure stuff. Don't knows how to play a bard, because you know what I mean? If you know how to play a bard, you don't want to hang out with the person who knows how to play a bard. Someone's going to end up singing. It's terrible. Got these guys. Awesome. Here were some Forgotten Realms from 2003, The Unapproachable East. And again, when we get these sort of books, what you're going to have from May of 2003, what you're going to have is you're basically going to have like different forms of magic, different races, different prestige classes, and then different feats. But like I said, the different feats are great, wonderful, more rules to keep track of. But when we're looking at those things, like those skills, those feats, all of those things are just going to be more things that we're going to be thinking of treating, just like we treated those 3 basic stats in fighting fantasy, taking those spells that we generated in our study of the materials and the media that we were looking at on our nostalgia loop tours, and putting them or figuring out ways to put them onto these things. And when I was originally thinking about doing this video, it was going to be more about, I think it was going to be coming into talking about the skills and talking about putting the spells on the skills. But I think probably when I started doing the video, I think I probably came to know and understand that we had more to do with that I hadn't done enough with introducing, talking about Dungeons and Dragons material yet, and that there was more stuff that we needed to do before we just went into just talking about skills. But when we talk about skills, what I thought was interesting is just that notion. I think I touched upon it before, of what we're doing with this MetaRPG occult practice and this time travel practice and this practice of playing the role-playing games in this MetaRPG way of looking at how actions are described and performed in an imagined, virtual, visualized space, and then figuring out how connections can be made to take those lessons about working with energy there and how energy can be moved around those aspects of skill execution or mechanical skill comprehension in those spaces, and then trying to see how we can use those experiences or those observations to inform our use of energy, either in an occult practice or in a philosophical or psychological way in our real world environment. If that makes sense. What if your DM was a bard and sang the campaign? Murder them, yes or yes? Ba-da-da-da-da-da. See what you did there. And never, ever go into the Underdark. No, go into the Underdark. You go into the Underdark. Because that's the sort of thing. Because talking about going into the Underdark was great. In a daily practice, keeping a log of skill execution for a daily point system, you could, but it's also just the notion of, like, so for example, if we were looking at, okay, so let's try to think of a real example. Okay, in 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons, classes have certain skills that they excel at, class skills. Skills also are described, certain skills are described and work in certain ways. Also, it's described how certain actions and the difficulty of certain actions and performing certain actions are affected in certain ways. So just taking things like that, we can try and understand things like either a imagined or constructed individual like a tulpa or a player character would have things that they're good at or not good at, right? Things that they could excel at or not excel at. And we take things like energy, we take from spells and put them on them. We could see and understand that this could be representative of something that they are good at, or something that they're, is a hindrance or something. And in so doing, we can come and understand, we just, understand something about that. And then you just see something like, okay, so for example, if we look at something like a climbing skill, and it's describing how, a surface being wet makes the action more difficult to perform. Right now, that's obvious. That's self-evident and obvious. But seeing it there in black and white, we come and understand that things in the environment make things more difficult, and that the success of a given action is affected negatively by the influence of other things. So if I am now in a real world environment, and for whatever reason I am comprehending the success of a shut up your face spell, and I'm going to cast a shut up your face spell, and I'm going to do it, and informed by this MetaRPG practice, right? I'm going to roll for success. Or I'm not rolling necessarily for success to say, oh, if I did this, I won, or I didn't win. Maybe I'm just rolling to make to have a piece of observable evidence to figure out whether or not it was successful or not. Did it work? I perform the shut up your face spell, right? So I do the shut up your face spell. I'm aware of my abilities. I'm aware of my general sense of acumen. Maybe I'm aware of my target. I'm aware of, the different factors at play. But let's say I'm also aware of the fact that there's an intervening factor of lovely Tapula Holiday with the big old double D's, even though, heaven forfend, it's not her fault, but, the left areola, it's wonky. And it's just, she's stunning and she's a beauty, but every time you see her naked, you just can't help but look at that. Is it the photo? No, damn it. A little Photoshop. But you need it every time. It's just, but whatever. She's a factor of play. She's got his back, whatever, you know what I mean? And you just, every time you can't get it out of your mind that, some guys have all the luck. And for whatever reason, I'm looking for a roll of stone. Hold on, wait. No flash photography. Where are all my freaking... You gotta be kidding me. What the hell's going on here? This is insanity. One D20. This is incredible. But I've got one. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I've got one D20. I got one D8 there. So it's a symbolic thing. That's crazy. What happened? You know what I mean? Like, I've got all this dice, and then all of a sudden I got no dice. What the... My God. So, you know what I mean? We're doing various, so I'm not necessarily, you know what I mean? It's like, which way is the wind blowing? You don't think that licking your finger and putting it in the wind is going to make the wind move one way or the other. You're trying to get the lay of the land. So I rolled, guess what? If I'm lying, I'm dying. I got a 20, natural 20. It's a success. It is a success. There you go. I got to run. Dinner's ready. Much love, everyone. CW, fun show. Stream, really enjoying it. Good. I'm glad you did. Glad you did. Yeah. There you go. Take care. Enjoy dinner. Enjoy. We rolled the D20. We rolled the natural 20, so we're good. Hey, babies. So look. So there you go. Hey, listen. Always leave them wanting more and leave on a success. So there you go. Hey, we'll pull some cards and we'll call it a night. So there you go. Hey, listen. 2003, we're on the money. Let's do this. Yeah, here's what we're gonna do. Trying to think. I want to do it like this. But remember, so what the basic thing is this, is that if you look at 3.0 and 3.5, you've got so many years of stuff, and especially for where we are now. So look, check this out. I've got the player, this is all from 2003. Player's Handbook, Unapproachable Beliefs, Fiend Folio, Arms and Equipment Guide. But check this out. That's the player, a location, an enemy, and equipment. So we're going to pull a card for the us as an individual. We're going to pull a card for, like, this is going to be kind of, we're going to think about, I'm like trying to think, because this is 4/3/2023. Okay, so we're going to think of, we're going to let our cards kind of form a player, kind of form a character that we're going to let come in. And it's actually kind of like an adventure, actually, because we're going to have a person, we're going to get insight into their gear. We're going to get insight into where they're going in this place. Okay? And we're going to try and get insight into who they're going to fight. And maybe we'll do all this. Maybe should we just do the player tonight? We'll do the player's handbook tonight. And I've got the 2003 Egyptian Tarot. And I don't know how we're going to find our player in our player's handbook. Let's see what we're going to do. We're doing this we're playing by doing. Let's see what we're going to do, how we're going to do this, how we're going to find our clues. We might do multiple cards if we need multiple cards to get us to our destination. And this is also a card for tonight. Ooh, we got one. Here we go. Ha! Ace of Wands. Pragmatic, like a card relating to a player archetype? Absolutely. Now check this out. Ace of Wands. That's the root of the principle of fire. That's action and activity. That can go in so many directions, but what immediately jumps out to me is a sorcerer. A magic user who uses the power of themselves, right? A magic user, a sorcerer, right, is the magic user that does not use the power of the divine, right? They don't use their wisdom like a bard or a cleric to use spells, and they don't use their intelligence. They use their charisma, right? They're like the insane, like self-studying, self-driven. A pyromancer is a sorcerer, right? Yeah, it could be a pyromancer. Because look, here we go. '51 sorcerer. Sorcerer. Sorcerers create magic the way a poet creates poems, with inborn talent honed by practice. They have no books, no mentors, no theories, just raw power that they direct at will. Right? That's that fire, will. Some sorcerers claim that blood of dragons courses through their veins. They claim may be true in some cases. It is common knowledge that certain powerful dragons can take humanoid form and even have humanoid lovers. Adventurers. The typical sorcerer adventurer in order to improve his abilities. Only by testing his limits can he surpass them. A sorcerer's power is inborn, part of his soul. Developing this power is a quest in itself for many sorcerers, regardless of how they wish to use their power. Some good sorcerers are driven by the need to prove themselves. And they also have familiars. They could have a familiar of a hawk. Familiars are magically linked to their masters. In some sense, the familiar and the master are practically one being. That's why, for example, the master can cast a personal range spell on a familiar, even though he can normally cast such a spell only on himself. Okay. Let's do more. We got Ace of Wands. So we know. I think we got their class, but like, who are they? Like, so they've their class, but what, like, we still need to figure out their race. We need a race that's going to be able to be a sorcerer. They need to have high charisma, I think. Believe. Sorcerers have following game statistic abilities. Charisma determines how powerful a spell a sorcerer can cast, how many spells he can cast per day, and how hard those spells are to resist. Like a wizard, a sorcerer benefits from high dexterity and constitution scores. Alignment, any hit die d4. Class skills. The sorcerer's class skills and the key ability for each skill are bluff, concentration, craft, knowledge, profession, and spellcraft. So now the great thing about generating a sorcerer is with craft and spellcraft, we can use that to generate and make things, like make magical items. And that's great because we can take our spells that we generate in the MetaRPG and use them to craft magical items through our sorcerer toolpath that we can use for specific actions. Pragmatic. Some pyromancers are studious individuals devoting their time and will to containing and controlling the raging infernos they control. Others become raging, reckless, tyrannical villains. Very interesting. I don't know that quote's from, but let's see. Let me see. Let's read further. Let's look to see if we can gain more insight with more cards. And we'll generate. We'll use some cards to generate our player. Like, we'll just get a sketch tonight. Get some more cards to generate more of a sketch. Then I'll generate the character, and then we'll move forward. And we'll have, depending on how much gold they have, we'll try and use the arms and equipment guide. Use this stuff to figure out what they. Well, actually, no, because if we get stuff with the cards, we can use the cards. Or our sorcerer can get a blessing from the gods, and we also will use the cards to figure out where we need to look as far as what movies we should look to see where we'll get our sorcerer's deities, because we're not going to take the Dungeons and Dragons deities necessarily. We can find our deities from anywhere. Temperance, the slow, methodical process of bringing things clear and working with things. When I pulled that card, I should have had a clearer intention of what I was pulling it for, like, if I was pulling for their identity, their gender, their alignment. Um, but I see it as kind of as their kind of, so it's their will, but they're sorcerer and they're doing this thing, but they are on a spiritual quest. Their desire is to do good. Their desire is to do that which is of the universe and of their, like, dharma, of their what is supposed to be, that there is an understanding that what they are able to do, they're able to do by bringing themselves in alignment with the natural order of things, and their ability to work is by understanding the natural order of things. So it's like they're lawful neutral in the sense that neutrality, things will go both ways depending on things. So I think that's kind of like an alignment thing. So let's, like, find out, like, maybe their identity. Let's, like, figure out their identity now. Let's figure out, like, just their biographical, like their bio, man, woman. Let's get a picture of them. Can we see them? Can you show us them? Can we get a picture of them? Man, woman, race, gnome, elf, orc, half orc. What's the deal? 8 of Swords. Now, this is the Egyptian Tarot, which is a pip deck. If this was, traditional deck, we'd have an easier time, because I think with the 8 of Swords, we'd have, depending on the deck, we might have I think we have a woman in most of those decks, trapped amongst all the swords. So, but here we have, so we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have the classic separation of the 5 swords from the 5 swords from the 3. But in any event, the swords are, this is the suit of the mind. So we have an intellectual person, but unfortunately, the 8 swords, it's wild. The 8 is the eternal, for me, it's always the eternal energy of the suit. And the swords, to have the eternal energy, is the mind eternally in motion. Unfortunately, it's the monkey mind. The great thing here is that the divine energy in this card is, we have the divine 3 energy of the 3 of the swords. So we have the 5, the 5 symbolizes, man, woman, human. And it's like this divine energy is kind of like boxed up this reptilian brain, almost helping it, separating it. So it's like we have these 8 swords here, but this confusion has been put into order here by faith, structure, and divinity. The hieroglyphs on the wall depict an orderly fashioning of things. The 8 swords by themselves could be arrayed in chaos. They could be arrayed in a way that makes it all equal, showing that everything, all this energy is moving out in 1,000 different directions all at once. But here it shows that, yes, this 8 is eternally in motion, but much like the Temperance card shows us, the individual soul, the practitioner, can work blah, blah, can work with what's available and make order and separate constituent parts, take that 8 that might be hard to work with by itself, focusing the divine out from the man, the animal instinct, thereby rendering that animal instinct under control, order is restored. We have insight from Pragmagic. 8 and lawful neutral makes sense. Does indeed. I like that. Loyal only to the fates. I like that impulse as well. I like how things are coming together. So we were looking for them. We were saying we wanted a picture of them, but we got a picture of like their mind. Or did we? It could also be this. We could also say, could they be a halfling or a gnome? Because we have this depiction of a smaller thing beneath man, right? Beneath 5 is the number of man. Then we have this smaller little thing separated underneath this animal, this beast. Might just be a little gnome. I like gnomes, in case you're curious. Gnomes make great illusionists. They make great sorcerers too. Let's ask for clarification. Human or gnome? The Chariot. Well, you know what it really says? The Chariot's really telling me this is like, well, you can go in any direction you want to. You know what I mean? You're go where it's going. Let the car drive. Things are going where they need to go. Human or gnome? I don't quite know yet. I'm going to pull another card. But 5, 6, 7. It was 8, 7. Going smaller. I always say that 7 is the number of the anthropomorphic god, like a Zeus. I really want to be gnome. That's the problem. Is I want to be a gnome. And I grabbed a different deck. I grabbed the 98 deck. And I'm shuffling it. It was from 5 years earlier. What am I doing? The Hierophant. The Hierophant, you know what the Hierophant would tell me? The Hierophant would be like, put this deck away. That's 98 deck. What are you doing? That's, you know what it is? It's like a reprimand. I'm taking that as it is. The Hierophant's like, get away. Come on. What are you doing? That's not the rules. Freebird. Hey, CW. What's going on, man? What's going on, Freebird? You're in the midst of craziness. We're trying to figure out human or gnome for our player character. I want it to be a gnome. Therefore, I'm going to pull tarot cards until I get one that says you could say it's a gnome. And I got a jumper. Here we go. Dude. Three of Cups. Three of Cups. It's like basically like, do what you want. You want to be a gnome? Be a gnome. That was what the Chariot was done. The Chariot's like, dude, be a gnome. Drive your car, man. Be a gnome. Right? Ace of Wands. Root of Power. Come on, man. You want to be a gnome? Be a gnome, dude. Look. The little guys like, come on, man. And look, and it's even that. It's like, because when I saw this initially, I was like, it's a Chariot, but it's like the two little things. It's like telling you, like, look, it's like big guys and little guys. 873. So there you go. Three of Cups, one on top of another, is a gnome size. A Smurf is 3 apples high. We know that much. Your baby will be a girl. The star. So I have to roll 3d6s until I get stats that can be a sorceress gnome. That's easy. Oh, man. And they're going to be like, oh, man. What am I doing? I'm a gnome? I love gnomes. When I did the whatchamacallit, the thing with whatchamacallit, I didn't know this. Apparently in Dungeons and Dragons, gnomes are bigger than halflings, but smaller than dwarfs. I don't know why that is. And they look nothing like gnomes, like from like they have no hats. I don't know why. But whatchamacallit. When I did the like the past life regression or whatever with what's his face? Hank Jones the third. We talked about gnomes because I was like in a big gnome thing. Because I was watching the role playing game channel at the time. This was back because I was always into role playing games. It was called what the heck was the name? Game Geeks, I think it's called. I forget what it's called, but anyway. But it was this guy who was constantly. I've yet to meet anyone who's plays a gnome, and I was like, I always play gnome. Whatever, asshole. There you go. Pragmagic. Damn, Smurfs are bigger than I thought. My entire life is a lie. Absolutely. Whenever anyone hears that Smurfs are 3 apples high, they're like, what? It's like, yeah. Female presenting pyromancer gnome, that is lawful neutral. There you go. Absolutely. We got it. I was like David Gnome riding the fox. There we go. Hey, let's check this out. You're the one that's pyromancer. I think pyromancers. I think yeah, because but we have to be careful because depending on how we get the spells, she might not be a pyromancer at the beginning. We gotta be careful. She might have to start her journey. You know what I mean? Because if we do the random spell generating, I forget. I don't know how they do it. Like, because I'm just used to like earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons where you get the spells. Like, you know, your wizard has to roll for the spell, and you might be like, "What's my first spell? Read magic." Oh man, you know what I mean? I spent the first 8 adventures of my life dodging. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? I'm carrying shit. You know what I mean? Like, yay! I can finally cast a spell. You know what I mean? Oh man, I finally second level. I roll for a new spell. Oh man, all this time doing nothing. We never ran into anything to read. You know what I mean? Sucked. Oh man, now I finally roll for another spell. What'd I get? Tensor's flying disc. Well, wonderful. Now I basically have a lazy Susan that flies. Wonderful. Great. Jeez. I was going here. I'm trying to do this artificial intelligent app. Here we go. Female gnome pyromancer. Oh, lawfully neutral. Was it lawful? We'll say lawful female gnome pyromancer. That'll be good. Go for it. We got some options. A little bit on the nose. They're all going to have hats. The minute you put gnome, anything in this artificial intelligence program, this one has a beard. I don't mind that. The one thing I always hated about Dungeons and Dragons, the first edition Dungeons and Dragons that I had as a kid was they said that female dwarves had beards. And I was like, the fuck are you talking about? They don't. This one does. I don't know why. Why do all the girls have no? This one, this is cool. They'll all have hats. They'll all have hats because if you name anything a gnome in an artificial intelligence program, art program, they will always have hats. Like it's a law of the universe. Must have hats. Here's the realistic setting. Ooh. Ah. Hey. That one might be one. Hold on, let's see. This little lady. Try to figure out get away with that, getting that all that glare. I'm crazy about that one. This one's pretty good. Let's see what this one's. There's another one. Pretty good. Let's find a winner. Let's try anime. We won't do this all night long, but these artificial intelligence art programs are great because if you do this sort of thing, you can really get a visual. Oh, this is cool. Ah. Oh, that's very cool. That might be very cool. Here we go. This one might work. Here we go. Do that. See? It's like, what? Very cool. So what we'll do is this, is that I'll come back, hopefully, tomorrow, the next day, or, a couple days from now, and we'll get her stats generated. We'll get her generated. And then once we do that, what we'll try and do is then do that same process to try and find some arms and equipment, or maybe some special arms and equipment in the arms and equipment book, and then maybe use a similar techniques to see if we can't. This is about a particular place in the Forgotten Realms, which is a land of Dungeons and Dragons, one of their little worlds. What's this? Schmutt. Get out of my book. In the East, it's kind of like their Conan the Barbarian world, like I think kind of like is kind of like a way to understand it for their Forgotten Realms place. Not quite Dark Sun. That's a cool place too. But when we explore that, we'll talk about we'll talk about virtual places within virtual realms, like the mysterious, like Forgotten Realms as a place, and especially like the fact that there's like technically a 2.0 Forgotten Realms, there's a first edition Forgotten Realms, there's a 3.0, 3.5 Forgotten Realms if you think about it, and there's a 5.0 Forgotten Realms. There's a fourth edition Forgotten Realms that almost no one ever goes to, right? And it's comprehensively different than a computer world, similar in so many ways, but different. And so when we could talk about, going there and places, that we could, see this person going and, how they could experience life there and similar. And then in similar ways, we can try and use these tarot cards to see if she can't figure out encounters or pro or con with people in the Fiend Folio. Little stuff to do. Have some fun. Okay. Pragmatic says, yeah, that's tight. David Bucky says, good stuff, CW. Hey, seems good to me. Just don't step in the dick sauce. And by dick sauce, I mean jerks on the internet piss you off by being schmooze. I can't believe I killed 2 hours with you guys. That's how much fun this stuff is. This stuff's a lot of fun. I got to tell you. It really is. It's all around you. Play the world. Get active. The MetaRPG. SSP, TTT, the Meta RPG. I'm coming back. These dick burgers trying to hold me down with their bullshit. Man, they're going to feel like such morons when it turns out that I was the success story. These schmucks. I'm a bunch of jackasses. Really, honestly. Go ahead and make a documentary about that guy. They'll all be saying, hey, where's that other guy? He's writing his manifesto. You had your chance. Now I gotta go blow up the world because you're all a bunch of dicks. No, come on. Some of you are cool. Listen, I love you. Have a heck of a night. Have a heck of a day. I love you. I love you. I love you. If no one told you they loved you today, someone just did. That someone is CW Tweet. Listen, it's not a reference to Twitter or Dogecoin. Elon Musk is an idiot who's going to lose all his money within the next 5 years. I was right about cryptocurrency, and I'm going to be right about this one. Elon Musk is going to be practically penniless within 5 friggin' years. You don't believe me? Believe me. That guy is going to be an unsuccess story. And everyone who believed in him are the same people that believed in cryptocurrency. And they're all about to go the way of Putin. Okay? And he's about to be another amazing success story. Okay? Trust me. Trust me. Okay? I love you. Everything's going to be okay. Guess what, Ivan Teller? America's not burning down. Everything's fine. The amazing bank run didn't happen. It's 2008. Again, all over again. No, it's not. All the riots. It's falling apart. No, it's not. If they try and indict Trump, we're going to do nothing. You did nothing. They indicted Trump and you did effing nothing. Q Nation did nothing. It's over. So go back to deleting your racist Facebook and Twitter histories, because the brand new future that you thought was going to go back to the age-old past that you remember is not happening. Okay? But I love you all the same. I do. Peace. I love you. Don't you say that, David. I'll get in trouble. I love you. I love everybody. Be good.